Well,
But back home,
according to what
they
works, what's
used
clean,
to
what's
no,
efficient.
no, but they're used to using herbs and those and natural.
They don't use herbs in hospitals back home.
No. But what I'm saying is that is what works, and that's what they were doing for years.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the YouTube channel. This is Farai and Effia Team BI. So good to see you. We are back with part 3 of our series, and we're going to be tackling one of the issues that were raised in the first two, the issue of education. We're going to look at that in a bit more detail. But before we get into that, we want to kind of reiterate some of what we're trying to do here today.
Yes, so our series is called What Screens Are Doing to Your Children, and we are talking from a place of experience. We've got 3 children and we made mistakes with our firstborn that we learned from, and those experiences then kind of drove us to do a lot of research. So we've read a lot around this subject, and one of the key books that we've read is this book right here called Glow Kids, which we are recommending that every parent reads. We've provided the description, the link to it in the description box below. Okay,
so the question then today is about education, because there'll be a lot of parents that say, well, it's all good to say let's get rid of all of the gadgets, but what about if they're learning through them? I've got this app that teaches them how to read and how to count and to do shapes and colors. Schools are now involving more and more ed tech or educational technology in their schools to try and keep the children's minds engaged. I was blown away by this thing that you had at your school. It was this whiteboard.
Interactive whiteboard.
Yeah, how does it work? What does it do?
Do you know, it's really interesting because the school spent like a lot of money on those interactive boards, and they got us to do a lot of training on them, on how to use them. I think very few teachers did, to be honest. I'm not sure what it's like now, because it's been quite a few years since I've practiced as a teacher. But again, it was like, you know, if you used an interactive whiteboard in your lessons, you'd get like extra points for observations and that type of thing. So there was a push to kind of use more technological aids.
And the reason, and the reason they're doing that is because they found that the traditional way of learning, children are now being apparently less and less interested in it, but the reality is they are less and less able to keep their attention on one thing for a long period of time. And so in order to keep up with their diminishing attention span, they're throwing in all of these things now in the schools to try and keep so you have to be all singing, all dancing, you have to have this flashing lights, the pizzazz, just so you can keep these 20, 30 students entertained, or at the very least engaged. But the problem with that is the more stimulation you give them, then the more stimulation they need. And for many of you parents, you've probably seen the same thing, that the more gadgets you give your children, it doesn't satisfy them, they need more, because what happens is they build a tolerance and they need now more stimulation in order to get that excitement again. It's very much like a drug, and that's not even trying to make it sound worse than it is. So there's this old saying that if you win someone by entertainment, you have to then keep them by entertainment. And so if the children are coming to school and they're just being bedazzled with they actually have now educational video games that they're trying to introduce into the schools, which is very, very interesting. And I read somewhere that the people who make games like Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty are all involved in trying to make education, because they understand how the brain works, and so it's fascinating. But if you watch a movie or you browse the internet for about an hour, and you're going from one thing to the other, or the movie's changing scenes and everything's happening very quickly, what tends to happen is if you immediately after that, as a grown-up, try and read a book, it'll be very
we have a problem on our hands. And of course, like, we can't attribute all of ADHD to that, but it most certainly is a factor when you look at the research. In 2012, the MacArthur Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Entertainment Software Association, and Electronic Arts worked together to envision a future where the power of games could be used to attract and sustain youth interest in learning while providing high-quality assessment for teachers and administrators.
So, Mr. Vaccine is...
Can we say that?
We just did. It just happened. Just ignore that last bit. He's also trying to teach your kids through video games and entertainment. So, trust me, I think there's a massive... I wouldn't even call it conspiracy, just an agenda. There is an agenda to change the way that people learn. But the problem with that is, if it's progressive and it's working, great, I'm all for it. The problem isn't technology. The problem is when technology is introduced. Yeah. It's the age that it's being introduced. Yeah. It's the rate that it's being introduced. And it's at what cost? What are we losing? Because the reality is, it seems like the way we used to learn in our generation, where you had a notepad and you had to write things down and you had to memorize and remember, and your use of a computer was few and far in between. I remember in my school, there was one room full of computers. Yeah. That was it. There was no mobile phones. There was no tablets. There was no... My teacher had a chalk on a chalkboard. And if I was going to take notes, I couldn't record them. I couldn't type them. It was handwritten. And you'd have to remember tons of information. It was my generation that could remember, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7, if not more, mobile numbers. But think about how far we've come from that, where we don't even remember much anymore. And memory is so important. And
in terms of when you write things down, like, studies have proven that you process the information better when you actually write it down. And so it's supposed to complement.
Yeah.
Not
substitute.
Yes, and not be so heavily relied upon, and we're not supposed to be so dependent on it.
Yeah, it's very true. It's meant to be an aid, right? So if I'm doing well anyway, I'm actually doing very well. I'm getting A's and I'm learning, and it comes alongside of me, and it kind of like pushes me along a little bit, and it helps me and aids me. That's fine. But if what I'm learning is being replaced solely by it, then we really do have a problem. Yeah. So as you study the book, you kind of really get to realize very quickly how ed tech is actually working backwards in terms of education, and what works forward, or what actually works with children in terms of their development and progression in education is, surprise, surprise, nature, art, book reading, writing things down on paper, retention, memory, all of these things is actually what makes children smart and grow and develop and mature. It's not that technology is evil. It's just that the old school way actually is still yet hasn't been proven wrong yet. I'm not saying that in the future something might not come up that will, but the reality is, if we can get our children in nature, if we can get them to be artistic, if we can get them to read books, it has so much more positive influence. They've actually done a number of studies. These studies actually show that children who encounter nature on a regular basis actually tend to deal with life in a more positive way. They have less life stress.
And there are many schools that have actually been founded on these principles. So forest schools are gaining popularity at the moment. But, that's a big thing, whereby, parents are investing in forest schooling because they want their children to be one with nature. Okay. That sounds very hippie-like. But, just as in getting them outside, getting them in the great outdoors. And the reason is because the research has shown that it does wonders for the development of the children. And you've also got Waldorf and Steiner schools, which are, private schools. As I mentioned in the first episode of this series, that they have zero tech, like
Wow.
no tech whatsoever. It's a principle of those types of schools. And the people who manufacture and make all of these products for
the ed tech, like the tablets, the phones, the games.
For the masses
Yeah.
to give to their children, they put their children in those schools.
They don't have the kind of tech. And we're going to speak about that in a moment and give you a few quotes. But it's so fascinating. Not all of us can afford private schools, but you can afford to take your children outdoors. There's so many great places in the UK, forests that you can do, national trust places where you can go hiking. We went to Seven Sisters in Eastbourne, Seven Sister Cliffs and the Devil's Dyke. Weird name, but so beautiful. I know. And the children absolutely loved it. There's just something about being outside. The reality is when you're outside, time is in real time. Every minute of the journey is felt. When you're sitting there, you feel every second. The space is real and it's big. And so, but when you're in an app or a computer game, then everything changes because time is now condensed, right? The movie is a span of 6 years, but you watch it in 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour and a half, whatever. Everything is condensed, fast paced. The space is minimized to what the director wants you to see. So when you're in a game or ed tech or in a movie, you are seeing what the director wants you to see and learning what the writer wants you to learn. You don't engage anything. You have to shut yourself down and just be in another man's world. But when you're in nature and when you're reading books, you are the one that comes up with the colors and the sounds and the space and the time, and you really create your own from your own imagination. You create this world. You imagine what people look like, and so you're developing, you're growing, you're reading the book, your vocabulary is growing. I mean, there's just so much more that happens when you're outdoors and you're engaging in art when you're reading books.
One of the things I'm getting a bit frustrated about is the arts is slowly being eroded. You know, so many of the youth in our church can't take drama drama for A levels, because sixth forms aren't offering it as a subject anymore. So, you know, just all of these things that provide the opportunity for expression, for creativity, for your imagination to develop and to grow are being removed bit by bit. And in private schools, they push the arts.
Wow.
They invest in the arts. They invest in sports. Do you know what I mean? You will be outdoors playing whatever game it is, no matter what the weather. They don't care. You know, they want you outdoors because there is an understanding there. And but this is not what's happening for the average child who's going to a state school. You know, and so I think there's a lot of reflection that needs to take place.
One of the things we've noticed is that children these days don't know what it means to wait. They you know, a 5-minute journey to them is like the longest journey in the world, because the game they've been playing that's teaching them the alphabet, everything happens like that. And so again, I remember growing up in Zimbabwe, even in this country when I was younger, you would go to a dentist or a hospital and you'd be in a queue for something, and sometimes you'd be in a queue for 45 minutes to an hour, and you just sit there with your parent and not move. Sometimes there's nothing to read, nothing to do. They didn't have any computer games back then. Sometimes you'd borrow your mum's phone and I don't know, like listen to the ringtones. That's just about much.
I don't do that.
These days, children just have no idea what it means to be patient. And I feel for us as parents, because we just can't compete with the fast-paced moving of tech and ed tech as well.
And you know what? It's important for us to learn how to be still and for children to learn how to be still. I went and got my braids done, and a lady dropped off her daughter who's probably about 5 to get her hair braided. And so her mum dropped her off, and then her mum gave a tablet to her and said to the lady that was at the hair salon, "Oh, please make sure that it's plugged in because it cannot die." You know, and so she sat there the whole time on the tablet whilst her hair was being done. And then when her mum came to pick her up, she was like, oh, your hair looks lovely. Da-da. And she didn't look up once to respond. And that was not an issue. And I just thought, you know, it could have been a book. It could have been drawing. It could have been nothing.
Yeah.
And that would have even provided an opportunity for conversation. Do you know what I mean? Like, between the hairdresser and the girl in the seat, for example. But that's now become a standard.
Yeah. Interesting you say that, because the book actually says that we are losing the art of conversation.
Yes.
There's no longer any eye contact between people anymore.
Yeah.
And sometimes it stems from us as parents, because whenever our children want to speak to us, we have our heads on the computer, our heads in the phone. So they're speaking to us and we're looking at, yep, what is it? Yep. And we glance. So they grow up learning that in order to communicate with someone, you don't need to look at them.
Yeah.
You don't need to have eye contact, and that's something that is being eroded. And eye contact in conversation is actually very important, and we'll touch on that a little later. But ed tech, or educational technology, is actually, in reality, based on the studies and based on what the book says, it's like a Trojan horse. It comes into your home and into our schools as a gift, but inside are dangers that people are not really talking about or exploring, apart from these experts and these people that that have these truths in these books. But it definitely is something we need to talk about.
And what we also need to understand is that, as with everything, in the second episode actually of the series that we're doing, we had like a clip, and the lady in the clip was saying, addiction is money. With all of this, the agenda ultimately is financially driven. It's financially motivated. So, you know, these companies that are going to schools and they're going to the, the educational departments of governments and so on, and pushing that, this is what our children need. There is money in it for them. Yeah. That is why they're doing it.
And it's $1 billion industry. In the book, The Glow Kids, the author actually speaks about an Australian teacher who just, at one point, just said, I'm getting rid of all of this. He got rid of all of the educational technology in his school. And I encourage you to read the book and just look at the trajectory that he went down and his rationale behind it. You'll find it very fascinating. A lot of people think things like Minecraft, which is blowing up. It's like, oh, that's such an educational thing. It'll make your children smarter. Let's give them an iPad. Let's give them their own phones at the age of 6 or whatever the case may be. And they really, a lot of people really believe that this helps your children, because you don't want them to be tech ignorant as they get older. Like, you want them to be able to navigate the world that we live in, because, some people actually believe now that the internet is actually a human right.
Yeah. I remember when I was teaching, actually, like, children who didn't have computers were identified, and there was a drive to make sure that, we gave them access. And I understand, the heart behind that. You don't want them to miss out, because, for example, if you're typing up an essay, it's not practical to handwrite that. I get it. But the mindset was that they were deprived. Let's remember, Bill Gates was a hands-on Boy Scout who never used a computer until he was 13. Steve Jobs was a mechanical tinkerer, using the hand-eye coordination required for hands-on building the kind of effort that best develops neuronal synaptic connections, and he never used a computer until age 12. Other tech geniuses like Google founders Sergey Brin and Larry Page, Amazon creator Jeff Bezos, and Wikipedia founder Jimmy Wales all went to no-tech or low-tech Montessori schools, which also embrace a connection with nature experiences. So we're on Instagram, actually, Team by AI. Follow us if you're not already. And one of our recent posts was in relation to this series. And I actually quoted the fact that, what's his name, that said that he doesn't allow his children
Steve Jobs.
Yeah, Steve Jobs. And underneath the caption was, it's an age-old saying that as a drug dealer, you don't get high off your own supply.
Or give it to your children.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, unless it's good stuff.
It is.
What?
What stuff?
Basically, in summary, our children don't need more tech. What they actually need is sharper minds. And research has proven over and over again that ed tech, computer games, movies, phones, iPads, all of that stuff is actually dulling the minds of our children and not sharpening the minds of our children. And so
it's dulling the minds of us.
Yeah, it's true. It's dulling the minds of everyone. We've become zombies. The next time you go into a bus or into underground train, just look around. Just take your head off your phone and just look down the corridor of people, and you will see there are very, very few people that are not on their phones. We all literally just walk down. We don't have the same memories we used to have. We don't have the same critical thinking we used to have. We consume and we believe everything we hear off the bat. And this has been I'm going off on a tangent now. Let's just stick to the thing.
Research shows that the brain retains information better read from paper than a screen, and that students who take notes by hand are more successful on tests than those who type their notes on a computer. Yet art, music, sports, play, healthy meals, and green space, things we know help the developing brain, are on the chopping block of school districts' budgets annually. Even knowing this, at the suggestion that we get screen devices out of the classroom and away from our children, people gasp. But they'll need them for the world of the future. Our children will need fully functioning brains for the world of the future. Let's put that first.
Yeah, and I think that's a very, very good quote. And, one of the best real life examples of this is look at students coming in from underdeveloped?
I don't like that term.
But it's true though.
Developing and according to whose standard?
The West.
Exactly.
No, but Annie, we can actually see that they are developed.
Who's developed?
The West. Driving from here to your mum's house, smooth roads.
Yes.
Driving from the shop to your brother's house, godoof, godoof, godoof.
No, but that's not okay.
It's developing.
So they have roads, but we have other things back home that this country doesn't have.
Like what?
Continue with your point, and then the point that you're going to make. The point that he was going to make.
No, but this debate, this impromptu debate is about the word developing, not about the advantages.
My point is, who gets to decide that?
No, but it's tangible.
But you're developing according to whose standard? According to their standard.
No, not according to anyone's standard. According to what is developed.
I saw this thing on Instagram, which was so true. No, it's true. Most in Ghana, we don't have credit. If you have a car, it's your car. If you have a house, it's your house. But in this country, you have a house, it's on a mortgage.
But no.
You have a car, it's on finance.
Look,
so who's poor?
If you see the standard of hospitals in one country and you look at the other, one will be more developed than the other. So that one's someone's developing country.
That's the problem, because the standard of hospitals, according to Western society.
No, according to what works, what's clean, what's efficient.
No, but they're used to using herbs and those are natural.
They don't use herbs in the hospital.
No, but what I'm saying is that is what works, and that's what they were doing for years.
If your family go to witch doctors,
it's not about witch doctor.
They go to
no, it's not about witch doctor.
No, you're saying herbs. Do hospitals use herbs in Africa?
No, they don't.
Thank you.
No, but the point that I'm making, modern medicine is full of all kinds of artificial rubbish,
But that's not the argument I'm making.
Whereas a lot of these, there are lots of natural alternatives
which hospitals in Africa don't use.
No, but I mean, you've even got, what's the people here that don't use medicine? What are they called?
Holistic.
No. There's a term. I can't remember the term. We'll put it on the screen when I remember. But
we're not putting nothing on.
No, we are going to. No, you're not. But there are people in this country who reject modern medicine. You had something in your eye. They reject modern medicine.
I get that, but that's not the argument I'm making though. The argument I'm making is there is intangible things that we can speak about, like the education of a Nigerian man or a Nigerian girl compared to the same level in this country, despite the country having more ed tech and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So
that was the point that we were making.
Yeah, but those are the intangibles. But the tangibles is, if you're in a school like the one I went to in Zimbabwe, where some of the classrooms don't have doors. When people come from countries where there are no ed tech whatsoever, they still use the old school traditional way of learning. And we can point mostly to African countries, Indian countries, and
Caribbean,
yeah, where it's just not as developed in that sense. They seem to excel in education far beyond their peers in Western countries. And what's the difference? The idea is this: the less tech you have growing up, you have a head start when it comes to having a sharp mind, retention and attention and comprehension. So retention, attention and comprehension. And unfortunately, if you go back home, if you're not from this country originally, we are seeing that even things like phones and tablets, they're seeping into every home. If we continue at this rate, at some point, every home is going to have a TV, a computer, a tablet, a phone, if that's not the case already. And so...
And we're not even talking about multiple. Like in many American homes, like there's a TV in every room.
Yeah.
Studies show that reading develops imagination, induction, reflection, and critical thinking, as well as vocabulary, in a way that visual media, such as video games and television, do not.
Okay, just going back to the point of eye contact when you're talking to... You have beautiful eyes, by the way.
Thank you.
Points. The average percentage adults look at each other's eyes during conversation is about 50 to 60% in our current generation. And in order to actually build a connection between two human beings, they say that it should be between 60 and 70%. So no eye contact means no emotional connection, no connection. And so we are losing that. Very rarely now do even adults really speak and give eye contact with each other. So all of these things are aiding to separate us and to break connection from human being to human being. Yeah. And it's a very, very sad thing to see. This is why people are becoming more and more distant from each other, more and more living in their own little bubbles, and the only voice that we actually listen to and say, yeah, we'll do whatever they say, is the media. Right? Because we're always in their faces, and whatever they give to us, that's what we run with. But the most important connection that you have as a parent is with your children, with your spouse, but also with your children. That connection there is the most powerful and most important. And at some point, we need to realize that our devices and gadgets are literally standing in the way of that connection sometimes.
And that's something I've tried to be very conscious of, that if one of the children address me about something, I just so happen at that moment to be on the computer or on my phone, that I stop and actually turn to look at them, because I'm trying to model the behavior that I want from them.
Benjamin actually was terrible with eye to eye.
Eye contact.
With eye contact a while ago.
We're still working on it though. But he's a lot
better. He's way better. Yeah. Like I remember, he would speak to you and he'd be like this. It's almost like he's looking for something to do whilst he's speaking to you, and his hands would be like that. He'd be just all over the place. Like, let's have a conversation. And he would look and then just look away. But as he's got older and as we've been more and more deliberate, Barfour's got great eye contact, Renee's got great eye contact, and Benjamin's kind of like, he's there. He's almost like at a normal thing. I want to really develop that more. Yeah. That whole 60 to 70% thing, it's like, that's crazy. That's a lot. And, you speak to someone, you look them dead in the eye. Most people would then, look away. And I don't know why.
Yeah, like we find that awkward now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important. There's a blogger called Rachel Martin who wrote an interesting blog called 20 Things I Will Regret Not Having Done With My Children. And she says this:
I want my kids to remember that there were times when their mother looked them in the eye and smiled. And for me, this often means shutting my laptop, putting down my phone, stopping my list, and just giving them time.
And this is where we kind of finish and close up. It's a very interesting topic to look at because it's in your home and it's at your schools. And if you're a homeschooler here, then you've probably engaged with tech to try and help educate your children. It's quite convenient, really, to try and teach someone to read using an app. Just give them the thing, and as they're going through it, they get points and rewards every time they get something right. But it's that drug, isn't it? It's that cycle, and now they want to go to the next level, and we justify it saying, well, they're learning, aren't they? They now know to, but it's a Trojan horse. It looks like a gift, but the research has shown that it actually does more harm than good. In fact, it does a lot of harm.
Because what's driving them is getting the points.
Yes. Yeah.
Rather than the actual learning.
Yeah. The reward, the dopamine, the cycle or the stimulation is what drives them to. So you think, oh, little Johnny really wants to learn, but nah, he wants to get the highest score on that thing. So very fascinating. Something really for parents to think about. So then the discussion really, because we've kind of given suggestions in the first video and the second video, and I think all the suggestions moving forward are going to be quite similar, but we are going to dedicate an entire episode, if you want to call it that, like just on things to do.
As in what to do, like the solution.
Yeah, how to detox and what to do. Yeah. But in light of this, a parent wants to educate their children, they're using these tools. What do you think would be a good alternative?
So I think it's a mindset shift that needs to take place. We need to shift from relying on it to seeing it as not being an option. When something is removed as an option, you are driven to find alternatives. Yeah. So, for example, we removed the microwave from our home a few years ago, just for health reasons.
Yeah, so initially when Effie was like, we're going to get rid of the microwave, I freaked out because I thought, well, how are we going to live? This is it. Jesus is coming back now. Like, this is the last days. How can you not have a microwave? It doesn't make any sense. And so I was very skeptical. I thought Effie is just wearing her tinfoil hat again, and that kind of stuff. But we got rid of it in the end. And speaking about myself, I was then forced to rethink food.
Yes.
I can't buy microwave meals anymore. I have to cook smart because there's some foods that are very difficult to reheat. But now it's so normal. It's literally part of our routine. And so it's the same thing. When you get rid of these things, your children may freak out first. They may curse the day you were born. They may write all over the walls.
But they'll adjust.
And they will live.
You will all adjust.
They will not die.
But this is it. And so it's once it's removed as an option in your mind, in your plans, in the way that you function, you will be surprised at how you are then able to adapt. And what it then does is it motivates you, it inspires you, and it drives you to invest in other things. So our home is filled with board games, with resources and that type of thing, because they don't have screens. And so I'm forever picking up these bits and pieces because screens aren't an option like that.
And it's interesting that the one child that we have who had all of the tech when he was growing up, from a baby he was holding phones up until we kind of caught on to this, he's the only one that ever complains about being bored.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that now. I mean, just today, he just since his workout, I'm bored.
What do I do? He's
got books, board games, toys. There's a trampoline. I mean, there's
huge
so much
trampoline.
to do. So much to do.
And he's like, what do I do? I'm bored. And so he's not like that all the time, but if we are ever to hear a complaint, it would be from him.
For him, yeah.
It would never be from the other two.
It's not that the other two don't complain, and it's not that he never finds things to do. It's just that the ratio is so night and day between him and his siblings. You'd be surprised how many really nice places are in the UK full of nature and the children can explore and run around, and it does wonders to them. And so our suggestion is remove it as an option, take your children outside and start introducing other forms of entertainment in the home that the entire family can enjoy. Yeah. Don't have the dinner where this person is in this room, that person is on the phone. Get rid of all of that. Sit around the table, discuss the day together. It'll be awkward. If you don't do it, it'll be awkward at first, but over time it becomes a culture.
Yeah.
And just build on that. And teach your children to have eyeball to eyeball conversations.
And it doesn't have to be background noise. You know, you don't always have to have, what do they call it? The background?
White noise.
White noise. You don't always have to have it playing in the background.
No, but why is it called white noise though? Why can't it be called black noise?
Oh, whatever. You don't even have to... You don't even have to stop. He's mocking. But you don't, it's just, it doesn't have to be like ever present in your home.
Stimulation. You don't have to continuously be stimulated. Yeah. But it's a problem. We know that is because it's a problem for all of us, myself and nephew included, but we're trying to be intentional with it.
So if you are enjoying this series, we would love to hear from you. We've been loving to read your comments. You know, to be honest, the responses have been quite overwhelming. So many people have just been really happy that there are parents out there having this conversation. And I think we've just really appreciated and valued the feedback that we've received, and we'd love to hear more. So please do write your comments, suggestions, ideas in the box below, and also don't forget to help our channel to grow, subscribe to the channel as well, recommend it to people that you know would benefit from it. And we are also on Instagram, the same handle, Team Bayayi.
Okay, thank you very much. Nothing funny or weird for me today about subscription. Being very mature. God bless you. See you on the next episode. Can you press my maturity?
Yes.
I haven't eaten for 4 days. Please subscribe, and my dad won't feed me. And I'm being serious.
Hey.